The most important objective of agricultural extension system is to enable livelihood security for the farmers, and to ensure that there is a livelihood security, farmers will have to be informed of the latest technologies in the agricultural extension system, and these technologies have to be transferred effectively to see that farmers accept and adopt these technologies. It is in this context the process of diffusion and adoption are becoming very important. We will look at it very briefly as to what are all the important aspects to be covered under these two subjects. Diffusion is the process by which an innovation is communicated through certain channels over time among the members of a social system. The very definition is highlighting some very important components of the diffusion process. One is that there is an innovation involved. The second, there is a communication through certain channels, and the third one, it's happening over a period of time and it is occurring among the members of the social system. As is different from other types of communication, diffusion is concerning innovations. Now look at the process of diffusion. Diffusion as a process. As a process, it is a social process and it is aimed at the spread of new ideas from its source of innovation or invention or creation to its ultimate use of adopters. In fact, it is involving a series of individual adoption decisions. Adoption and adoption process. We will look at the adoption as distinct from the adoption process. Adoption is a decision to make full use of an innovation as the best course of action available. Therefore, adoption is a decision to be made by an individual farmer. We call adoption a process because it is a decision making process and we are going through a number of mental stages before making a final decision to adopt an innovation. Therefore, it is consisting of a series of steps. Innovation is an idea, a practice or an object that is perceived as new by an individual or an unit of adoption. So this is absolutely a perception, it is actually a view that a farmer is having about innovation, which means that for one farmer one aspect may be an innovation, for another farmer it may not be an innovation. So there is a relative or a difference in the perceptions about innovations. Perception is an activity through which an individual becomes aware of objects around oneself and of events taking place. So perception actually is a mental activity an individual is undergoing and he is making some sense about what are all the objects around him and what are all the events taking place. We are coming to the diffusion of innovations, and the diffusion of innovation process involves the spread of innovation within a social system, and an innovation diffuses within a social system through its adoption by individuals and groups. Therefore, as extension workers, we are focusing more on the diffusion of innovations. There is a term called interaction effect, which means that when an innovation is adopted by a few farmers, these farmers influence a few other farmers to adopt, who in turn after for them it is a new stimulus and they are also adopting. This way the innovation is diffusing in a social system. The diffusion curve is a diagrammatic representation of number of individuals who have come to know of the existence of an innovation. It is over a period of time, and therefore when it is plotted, it gives an S-shaped curve. It is an S-shaped curve because over a period of time you will come to know that almost all the members in the social system come to know about the existence of a practice. And contrary to this, the adoption curve is normally shaped. The distinction between the S-shaped diffusion curve and the normally shaped adoption curve is that diffusion, we are plotting the number of individuals who have come across an innovation over a period of time. On the contrary, in the case of adoption, we are examining the number of individuals who have accepted the practice at a particular point of time. And data on the basis of studies conducted indicate that we have 2.5% of the population representing innovators who are the first people to accept and adopt an innovation. We have 13.5% of the farmers who will be constituting the early adopters. The third group, major group, 34% of the farmers come in this group of early majority. Similarly, another 34% of the farmers will be falling in the late majority group, and 16% of the farmers will be in the last group, namely the laggards group. Laggards are the last set of people to accept and adopt a practice. Elements in the diffusion process, as we have discussed so far, the diffusion process is involving four distinct mutually exclusive elements. One, innovation. Two, innovation about a practice, innovation about an agricultural technology, a new thing which is perceived as new by the farmer, and this innovation has to be communicated through certain communication channels. This innovation communication is taking place over a period of time, and depending upon the number of people who are coming to know about an innovation over a period of time, there will be changes in the number of people coming across, and it is happening in a social system, not in a vacuum. Let us look into the salient aspects of each one of the four elements in the process. And the first element, namely innovation, often is confused with the term technology, but we have to make a subtle difference between innovation and technology. Technology, as you may be knowing, will have two components, the hardware component and the software component. Hardware component is something which you can see. To tell you an example, in a computer, the system itself is a hardware component. You will be able to see the computer for yourself, and for the naked eye it is visible. So it is what is called as hardware. But to operate the computer you require a software, and the software is not visible. In the case of technology, hardware and software are more important, but in the case of innovation, it is the hardware which is more important, because what the farmers will be looking at is what is observable. And the second element is the communication channel. Normally mass media are very influential in the initial stages. For example, mass media have a pervasive effect of reaching a large number of people within a short span of time. But mass media will not be able to cater to the requirements in all the important stages. There are interpersonal channels, informal leaders, other farmers who will be very influential in spreading the innovation in a social system. Interpersonal sources have more credibility because these interpersonal sources are none other than peer group, other farmers, they are opinion leaders who are having almost similar traits or characteristics as that of the other farmers. This is what we call as homophily. The farmers have almost the same type of characters as that of the interpersonal sources. So they believe in whatever is being said by these interpersonal sources, and therefore interpersonal sources are very important in the diffusion of innovations. Heterophily, on the contrary, is focusing on the differences among members of a social system. If an interpersonal source is heterophilous, its efficiency will be comparatively less. The third important element is time, and the rate of adoption of an innovation in a social system is varying. It depends upon, one, the nature of the innovation, two, the nature of the social system. You must have seen that some farmers are accepting and adopting innovations relatively early. You will also find that there are some innovations which are very readily accepted and adopted by the farmers. There are some other innovations which are very slow in reaching the farmer's end. Social system, again, diffusion occurs in a social system. Social system consists of the farmers, the interpersonal sources, their peers, and all those elements who constitute the social system. They are wielding considerable influence in the acceptance of innovations. We have two classes of social system. One is a homogeneous social system and the second is a heterogeneous social system. Homogeneous social system is marked by similarity among members of the social system. In the heterogeneous social system, there is dissimilarity. People in a heterogeneous social system are dissimilar in certain characteristics. System norms play a very important role in the diffusion of innovations, and accepted patterns of social behavior are called as norms. There are certain accepted patterns which cannot be violated by the farmers. Maybe that the farmer is interested in adopting an innovation to increase agricultural productivity and to increase his income, but he must always have in his mind what is the value the society is placing on that innovation. To tell you an example, rearing of piggery may be a profitable enterprise, but in a social system where pork eating is forbidden, we cannot promote piggery as an enterprise. You know why? There are some sections of our community, particularly the Muslim people, for whom eating pork is forbidden. Therefore, an extension worker has to be very cautious before introducing an innovation in a social system. He has to or she has to take into consideration the system norms. We have seen that there are some informal sources, interpersonal sources operating in a social system. We call them as the opinion leaders. And the opinion leaders and the change agents like the extension workers, they are also helpful in the diffusion of innovations. And opinion leadership is the degree of informal influence in a desirable way wielded by some individuals in a social system. And these opinion leaders have a telling influence on the adoption decisions of other farmers. We have made some studies on the communication flow models. A distinction has to be made between communication flow models and communication models. In communication models, we are talking about the elements in the communication process, namely the source, message, channel and the receiver. But in communication flow models, we are looking at the number of steps through which a message is passing through the social system. There are at least three types of flow models. The one-step flow model, which is also equated to the hypodermic needle model, wherein it is assumed that the mass media are so powerful that they will be able to inject the messages directly into the social system. But often we come to know that the one-step flow model or the hypodermic needle model is not always correct. Therefore, we go to the two-step flow model, where we find that from mass media a set of farmers who are called as the opinion leaders receive the message first, and they pass on the message to the other farmers. So it involves two steps. And the third one is a multi-step flow model, where more than two steps are involved. Mass media to opinion leaders to other fellow farmers, and these fellow farmers to a larger section of the society. It is here that two-step flow model is playing a vital role in the diffusion of innovations. Reinvention is the degree to which a technology is changed or modified by a user in the process of its adoption and implementation. Many a times the innovations from the research system require certain adaptation, taking into consideration the edaphic and agroecological situations. That is what is called reinvention, and many a times we have a number of farmer innovations. Farmers have added their own innovations to the existing innovations from the research system. Farmers' innovations are also very important in the diffusion process. The types of innovation decisions normally are optional innovation decisions, collective innovation decisions, and authority innovation decisions. Optional innovation decisions, the individual has the freedom to accept or reject. Collective innovation decision, on the contrary, if you take an example of a rice belt, hundreds of farmers will be cultivating rice, where a collective decision has to be taken regarding a variety or a practice. Authority innovation decision is influenced by certain governmental policies and governmental directions. For example, if a chemical is banned by the government, farmers cannot use that. The consequences of innovation, again, you have desirable and undesirable consequences, you have direct and indirect consequences, anticipated and unanticipated consequences. To tell one simple example which will be explaining how the consequences of innovation are different in different systems, there is a classic case study of steel axes for Stone Age aborigines. They anticipated certain positive changes, but unfortunately there were negative changes because they had not taken care of how the additional remuneration, the additional money that the tribal farmers will be able to get through the steel axes, how this additional money has to be used, how it has to be saved, was not taught to the tribal people. As a result, there was abject poverty, and the situation became much worse than what it was earlier. It was something unanticipated, something not desirable. So we have seen in this course a number of concepts relating to adoption, decision, diffusion and innovations. We have so far seen some very important concepts related to diffusion of innovations. We have examined the adoption process, diffusion process. We have also examined what is an innovation. We looked at the various aspects related to the spread of innovation, and thank you for your hearing.